This morning we were never sure this Sunday between Christmas and New Year how many people are going to make it to church, but it's good to see so many of you here. I do apologise, we're having a bit of a problem with our speakers. My suggestion is we hit them with a hammer, but they're playing up a little bit at the moment, and Nigel's off with the kids. So, but that's great there. So this morning I want to talk to you about seasons. Let's have a little show of hands. It's going to test if I remember how many seasons there are in a year as well. I'm going to ask you to raise your hand for your favourite season of the year. So, who likes spring the most? Okay, spring, okay. This isn't going to be very technical, I'm just going to observe. Who likes spring, summer? Okay, nice, okay. Who likes autumn? And Christmas.
Winter.
Winter, yeah. See, I found the test. Winter. See, some of you don't like any seasons. Matt, you only like because of Christmas, and Die Hard is not a Christmas movie. We just have to keep reiterating that. So I'm going to kind of give it to spring, but some of you didn't put your hands up at all, so that's a bit weird, but that's okay. That's okay. But how many of you know that we also have seasons in our lives? And actually, let me backtrack a little bit. How do we know seasons are changing? Well, in the natural, in the spring to autumn, summer and winter, and that wasn't the right order, and I knew that. We can sometimes tell by the temperature, can't we? It changes. I kind of like the summer, but I'm not built for warm weather, but I do prefer to be warm than cold. So temperature does indicate a change of season. Also, at the moment, the amount of daylight, the amount of sunshine we're getting. We've just had the winter solstice, haven't we? And so the night should be getting lighter. I don't like dark evenings. I like to be able to sit out in the garden. And the weather obviously changes as well. And so those are some of the things that in the natural we see how the seasons are changing. But they're not only climate seasons. There are also seasons of life. And as I was sitting down this week and thinking about my message today and what God had laid on my heart, I was trying to define some of those kind of seasons in our life. And it can be tricky. But, you know, the easiest season is our childhood, isn't it? Up to kind of those middle teenage years, 13, 14, 15, we've got our childhood years, and that's very much a season in our lives. We're not really in control of what's happening in our lives. Our parents, our carers will be making those decisions for us, hopefully sometimes in consultation with us. And then we kind of go into that phase of, you know, maybe around 15, but actually on my notes say 18 to kind of 30. It's kind of extended itself now. When I was growing up, you know, maybe it was around 24, 25, you started to look to move out, but it's extended. And so there's that 18 to 30s part of your life, perhaps where you're in higher education, you're setting out in the working world, and you're forging ahead in a career or in a discipline that you're choosing to follow. And then there'll be some overlap with another season of life, which may be that you have a family. Not everybody goes on to have a family, but many people will have a family. They'll get married, or other things will happen, and then that's that time. And that is a time when you often feel skint. I can testify to that. Kids are expensive, and family life is expensive, and you don't feel like you know, you're just treading water, sometimes just trying to survive. And then I'm reliably informed that there is a time that you feel financially free, a season of I long for that day. It's coming, the kids will move out eventually. And although having spent some time with Darren and Harry this week, I'm not fully convinced they ever stop asking you for money, Harry. So there's a time when we become hopefully financially free, and you know they refer to that term, especially if you've got kids, empty nesters. And then there is that season of retirement. You know, you end that time where you should be able to put your feet up and relax, go fishing, watch the great Spurs teams of the years, win everything. That's not going to happen. But yeah, so there are those seasons in our life. And the Bible tells us that there are seasons. There are seasons for many things, and these are going to be well-known verses to you that, for those of you that have been around church for a little while. Ecclesiastes 3, 1-8. Ecclesiastes is a book found in the Old Testament. And if you've got a Bible, please do turn to it, but I'm going to read these verses out. And I want us to be really clear, these aren't all the seasons of life, but the author of Ecclesiastes here is trying to just get us to see that there is a season for many things. For everything there is a season, and a time for every matter under heaven. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to pluck up what is planted. A time to kill and a time to heal, not eat. A time to break down and a time to build up. A time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to mourn and a time to dance. A time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones together. A time to embrace, a time to refrain from embracing. A time to seek, a time to lose, a time to keep, and a time to cast away. I lost my notes. A time to tear and a time to sow. A time to keep silent and a time to speak. A time to love and a time to hate. A time for war and a time for peace. I'm just going to put this microphone back on so hopefully you can all hear me a bit better. That's a bit better. Excellent. So we see there in the author of Ecclesiastes, it's just painting this picture that there is seasons in our life. And we can actually see that in the life of Jesus as well. There were seasons in his life. We've just celebrated the birth of Jesus. Jesus didn't appear as a fully grown man and start performing miracles straight away. He arrived as a baby. And although we have one or two accounts in the Bible of his early life, we don't know very much about the first 30 years of his earthly presence. I think it is safe to assume that he spent more time working with Joseph, his father, as a carpenter than he did ministering during those first 30 years. And so we see that during that time, there must have been something happening in Jesus, but there was that season where he wasn't in the public eye, so to speak. And for us individually and for us as a church, there are, I believe, seasons in our lives. As a church, I think they are spiritual seasons mainly. For us individually, they are both spiritual and practical. Individually, it is challenging for me to be able to help you to say much about the season that you are in. You may not know. You'll know if you're in a season of building your career or in a family season, but where you are spiritually, you may need to look for some markers. You also need to accept that there are things that we can do. One of the things I remember when I became a Christian, I was kind of in my mid-20s, and then obviously I wasn't all in straight away. And as we grew, we had Joshua, and then Grace came along, and then my faith started to grow. And I wanted to be able to do so many things. I wanted to be able to serve. I wanted to be able to go into ministry. And it took Ruth to say to me that about the season of life that we were in. That it wasn't the right season. I couldn't be able to do everything that I wanted to do. And I've seen that in church life as well. That sometimes people have families but still want to be doing everything that they see in church, but it's not the right season for that. And so it's easy to see those seasons, but spiritually, it can be more challenging for the season that we're in. What do I mean by spiritual seasons? Well, some people here may be quite new to their faith. They may have only just become a follower of Jesus. And so you're in that season of learning, of on that real accelerated growth, hopefully, of spiritually understanding and of being transformed in what it means to be a Christian, what it means to be a follower of Jesus. Some of you may be a little bit wiser. Maybe have been around church for a number of years and have been growing, spiritually growing as a follower of Jesus, and you have that wisdom and you can look in and see things. Some of you may have been a Christian for a long time and be in the season of stuck in a rut, of just stuck. And we need to know what those seasons are. And we're going to look at how we do that in a few moments. But we have to know, we have to be looking for the signs of seasons in our lives individually. And some seasons, and as we'll see in a moment, will overlap. There'll be a bit of a crossover period in seasons. We don't automatically get up one day and finish spring and arrive straight into summer, do we? There's that time where, it's kind of around about the end of May, beginning of June, where some days it'll be a little bit chillier than others, but then we'll get that glorious sunshine. As a fisherman, they're the days I look for. The warm weather, the perfect time to go fishing. We don't suddenly get up one autumn and it's winter and there's snow on the ground. There's that crossover time where we're kind of between both seasons. But I really wanted to focus in for the rest of this morning about where we are as a church. And I felt this quite strongly before this morning's service in our prayer meeting. And this morning this may not be coming across as normally, as well as I would normally like, because I just feel God is working on something as I'm speaking this morning. That we are, as a church, leaving one season and entering a new season. We've been speaking about this for a few months from the front and within the leadership team as well. We've been talking about how certainly I feel, and hopefully the rest of the feel, that we're coming into a new season. I realised that next week I will have been the pastor here for 7 years. Brian said, gosh, it felt like longer than that before service. But I will have been here 7 years. This time 7 years ago, the Christmas decorations were down back in our house in Corby, and we were getting ready to move, and it was all slightly organised chaos. Ruth was getting ready to start a new job. I was obviously getting ready to step into being the pastor here. And that was definitely a new season for us as a family. And I believe now that everything that has happened over the last 7 years here at Living Springs has been God's plan as we've led up to this new season that we're about to enter. There is going to be some overlap. The season that we're coming from, I believe, has been, especially over the last maybe 6 months, a season of preparation. That we've seen a desire to pray and to have corporate prayer meetings increase in the church to the point now where we're fortunate that every day we gather corporately to pray. We've seen a hunger for the Word of God, for Bible study over the last 6 months. It's a joy when I see people posting photos of themselves or photos where they're in maybe Costa or Starbucks or around somebody's house and they're having a Bible study. And we've been in this season as a church where we have been hungry to experience God. And during that time we have been blessed. Over the last 7 years we have been blessed by seeing a number of people come to faith. A number of people return to God, come back from perhaps being away from church for a long time. I don't know, I think we must have baptised well over 25, 30 people in the last 7 years, which is good. We baptised 10 in the last, which has been fantastic. Or 9, sorry, in the last, which has been fantastic. But I believe that we're actually now entering a time, and we've been very careful about when we said this, but I believe that the opportunity now is for us to enter into a season of revival in Living Springs, but more importantly to me, revival in this region, in this area, in Cannock Chase. A revival of the church. People are hungry. We see it. Many of you will know that I've got to be careful I don't go too far down this track this morning. But I get on my hobby horse about the spiritualist churches. Well, they call themselves churches. The spiritualist gatherings that happen. And I don't like them. Not the people I love that go there. We want to reach the people, but I don't like the idea of the spiritualist gatherings, of mediums and sorcerers and witches and all of those things. But you know, the one thing it shows me as a pastor is that people are spiritually hungry. That they are aware that there is something else in life. And we are going into this time where we can provide the answer. We can introduce people. We can be going into a season of revival. Over the next 6 months, things are drastically going to change here in Living Springs. We can't help that. In faith, we believe that we will own St. Chad's this coming year. It's got to happen. The law of averages say that at some point it will happen. We're very close now. We are closer than, well, we're always going to be closer than we were before. But we are closer. It will happen in the next 3 or 4 months. We will take ownership of St. Chad's. And we won't be able to move in there straight away. It needs a lot of work doing to it. But that's going to be a significant change for us. I don't think Living Springs and Paul will know, certainly at the back, and Sue and Tony as some of our long-standing members here, that we have not worshipped regularly on a Sunday morning in our own building for 20 years, probably more. We've always been in a community centre. We've owned our own building during that time, but it wasn't suitable. That's going to be a significant change. Tony was saying before the service, he's really looking forward to not having to pack down every Sunday and put stuff away. I said, don't worry, we'll save you something to do, Tony. We'll find something that needs to go away in the new building. We're entering a new season. And in the next 6 months, there is going to be the opportunity for all of us to grow spiritually, to grow in our faith, to step out. Some of us will learn some new skills as we look at DIY in the new building and doing some of the work there ourselves. We're going to take what we've learned and the hunger that we've had in this last season, and it's going to transfer into this new season of growth, of revival, of seeing. And I make no apologies for saying that we want to see more and more people come to faith. That isn't at the exclusion of all of us that have been Christians for a long time, growing and being discipled and maturing in our faith. But our number one instruction from Jesus, the Great Commission, was to go and make disciples. And so making disciples means that we introduce people to Jesus. And that they become followers of him. And then we need to disciple them. We need to grow. But our number one aim, the reason we exist as a church, is to glorify God and to bring people into a relationship with him. And we have got to be laser focused on that. That we bring people into, and then, yes, we will disciple. And I'm not saying we're not going to do any of that, because discipleship is at the heart of what we do as well. But we need to be introducing people to Jesus. We need to be reaching our communities, our neighbours, our friends, our family. And so in this first 6 months of 2026, we're going to see a massive time of equipping. We've been looking at our calendar as a church leadership, and it's pretty packed. And we're going to make no apologies for that. You're not expected to be at everything. But there is going to be the opportunity for you to be equipped in the areas that God has called you to in this new season to serve. And on the 11th of January, we're going to talk more about revival. Next week, we're going to talk about faith, because that's really, really important at a time of revival. We're going to be asked to take some really big faith steps in the next 6 months to a year. And then we're going to talk about what revival looks like and how what we think, how we can know that we're entering a time of revival. I want to jump back now. I hope that's whetted your appetite for the new season. But I suggested earlier that you need to identify the season you are in. It's easy to identify a season, I think, if you're in the middle of it. I think let's go away perhaps from the kind of practical seasons of family life, of career, of retirement, all this. It's quite easy maybe to identify those seasons. But where are you spiritually? What spiritual season of your life are you in? And that can be difficult to spot sometimes. Sometimes you could be in that overlap time, a bit between. Sometimes you could be just right in the middle and not see it. How do we know? How, if you're not sure what season, perhaps you're not sure about what season of life you're in any area of your life, then how do you work it out? Well, here are 2 things that I suggest you do. 1, pray. I can't believe what we are. Well, no, sorry, that's not right. I can believe what we're seeing as a result of the prayer meetings that are happening every day, of people praying about certain situations. We need to do more of that. We are trying to put more and more opportunity for us to gather and pray together. Now, at the moment, we do that predominantly online just because of logistics. But we need to do more of that. Because out of our heart of prayer, we will see amazing things happen. So pray. Ask God to show you what season you are in. And then go and seek wise counsel. And the emphasis there is on the word wise counsel. Go and speak to a trusted Christian friend and say, can you help me identify what season I'm in? That can be especially useful if you are stuck in a rut. We've all been there. Stuck in the day-to-day of life, day-to-day of our spiritual journey, and we need that help from somebody to get us there, get us out of it. And sometimes we can be in a season and go, gosh, this is really hard work. I've had times like that in my personal life. In my financial life, growing, I can remember in my late 20s, 30s, 40s now, that we didn't always have a lot of spare cash. We seemed just to be working to live day to day. I can remember conversations with Ruth where we would sit there and say, we work really hard and yet we can't afford a holiday or whatever. This doesn't seem right. We just hadn't identified that was a season. We had young children, we were setting out on the property ladder and moving around, and so there was costs, and some of it was my bad spending as well. But we get stuck in a time and we feel like this is just like a hard slog. And even in church life, there have been times where I felt that, if I'm honest, as a Christian in my own spiritual journey, but also in the life of Living Springs and in the life of the church that I was part of before here, that we just feel like we're just stuck for a moment, that we're doing everything that we believe we should be doing, that we're praying, that we're talking to people about Jesus, we're trying to put on good services on a Sunday and get people engaged, and we just feel like it's just a struggle. And then I came across, or was reminded, and I used to have this verse on my desk in my old church. It's Galatians 6 verse 9. Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. Sometimes we just need to keep going. We just need to keep doing good. The whole context of these verses in Galatians 6 is always important to look at the context. It's about doing good to others, and Paul is encouraging the church to keep doing good. If we were to drop back to verse 8, it says, whoever sows to please their flesh, from the flesh will reap destruction. Whoever sows to please the Spirit, from the Spirit will reap eternal life. Sometimes we just need to keep going. I remember, I think it was probably about 18 months after I'd been here, about a year and a half as a minister. And there were some weeks there would just be 12 of us here. And we'd be preaching. And I'd be thinking, oh Lord, what's going wrong? What am I doing? Is it me? We hadn't seen, I think, very few salvations at that time, if any, in my first 18 months. And I was like, oh no, maybe I'm not cut out to be a pastor. And you can write your comments about that on the cards and send them in. I remember going up to Gary Gibbs, who was here last week, preaching. And I remember at that time he was the lead church planter and evangelist for Elim. And I went up to his office. Can I have a meeting, Gary? I don't know what's going wrong, but it's not happening. We spoke and we prayed, and he suggested a few things. But we kept going. As a leadership, we kept going. And God has blessed us, and it's all about God. We have seen salvations, we've seen baptisms, we've seen growth in people spiritually, we've seen growth numerically. But there were times when I wanted to give up, when I thought perhaps it's time to hand the reins on to somebody else. But we just need to keep going. We are in a season where we may not see the fruit of those actions. The church that I was part of, and I want to really caveat this because this could sound really big. This was absolutely nothing to do with me. It was a church plant. We moved to Corby I was working in the secular world at the time. And we moved to Corby to live. We needed to live in the Midlands from London, so we moved there. And we heard about this church. It was a church plant, an Elim church plant that was happening in the school just down the road from where we lived. And we went along on their second Sunday that they were there. And there was probably about 50 or 60 people there, which was amazing for a church plant. And it was really good. And we enjoyed it. We were going to a Baptist church at the time in a nearby town. We weren't worshipping in the town that we were living in. And we just felt God say, it's time to move to this other church. And we went. And that church, and I wasn't on leadership or anything at that point, and was really just still kind of a bit of an immature Christian and growing slowly. But that church has grown to well over 300 on a Sunday, from zero in 17 years. And it's an amazing church. Damien is a fantastic pastor of that church. But you know what? We've always said, and he has always said, is that church is actually built on the prayers of generations of Christians before in that town, who have sown seeds, who have not given up, who have pressed in, who have continued to do good, and then everything came together. And God blessed what was happening. That church has gone on, is now planting other churches as well. So we don't need to give up. Every season of your life serves as something. You know, I've done some really strange jobs in my life. I've had kind of 3 proper careers. Well, yeah, 3 careers. My first career was I spent about 10 years working in the NHS in pharmacy, and I have OCD, and it got progressively worse. and OCD and counting tablets do not go together. It's just so I finished my time in pharmacy. I then kind of dabbled a little bit, and we had our own business, and that's where some of our financial problems. I wouldn't call that a career, more of a car crash in the end. And then I went into debt recovery. I was a regional manager for a debt collection company. That's how I ended up in the Midlands. So I've had all these different experiences and seasons in my life, and then I came into ministry, which is where hopefully I hope God is going to hold me now till I retire, if you ever retire from ministry. But all of those careers, all of those things have taught me something. I've learned something. From doing some of the worst part, I was a security guard for a little while because I needed to earn some extra money. To running my own business, to being in the NHS, to all of those things have taught me something. So the season, I say that to say this, that the season you're in is there to teach you something. The challenge that you may be going through is there to teach you something. You see, I have sometimes the difficult task of sitting with people when they've lost a loved one. And I've been really fortunate in my life that as of yet I've not lost a parent. Both my parents are still alive. And I can sit with people as they grieve the loss of a parent, but what I can't say is, I know what you're going through. Because I've not been through it. I try to remember never to say that, but sometimes I'm sure I've said it by mistake. I would always try to say something like, I can't imagine what you're going through, because I can't. I haven't lost a wife, or in a lady's case, a husband. But I have to comfort them. But for those of you that have been through those situations, as much as we wouldn't want them to happen, as much as that season in our life would certainly not have been good and what we wanted to happen, you can use that time to help others who are going through similar things. Nothing is wasted. Even the painful times, nothing is wasted. I want to finish this morning with one warning. Don't fall into the trap of the comfort zone. Of being in that season where, everything, before I came into ministry, we had to work hard, but life was okay. It was comfortable. We were beginning to get ahead, so to speak, if you're ever ahead. We could have just relaxed into that time. You can do that in your spiritual life. Things are good, you've not got too many challenges. You're feeling okay. You come to church on a Sunday and everything's good. That's where the enemy wants you. He wants you not to be doing things, to stepping out in faith, to just being comfortable. I'm not saying go and take unnecessary risks, but don't get stuck in the comfort zone. The Apostle Paul writes about pressing on. Satan, the great deceiver, would have loved nothing more than for Living Springs and for us individually to sit right here and say, we don't want to grow anymore. We're not going to step out. We're just going to keep it ticking over. We're just going to be comfortable. We're not going to take any risks. We're not going to look to reach the regional people. We're just going to play it safe. Let's not get caught in the comfort zone. So my question to you this morning is, how much do you want to be involved? We're going into a new season. We're not going to try and stop it. We're going into a new season. And everybody, it will depend on your season of life, how much you can be involved. But there is a place and a role for everybody in this new season, and you need to answer, how much do you want to be involved? How do you know? How can you work out how much you should be involved? Well, I've already touched on it. We need to pray. Ask God what he wants you to do in this new season. Identify your current season. Know where you are in your own life, both practically but spiritually as well. Don't grow weary. Keep going. And then commit. Don't be half in, be fully in. I have spent a long time in my Christian life being half in, or 3/4 in, or 90% in. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing sometimes. It's certainly not the best thing. I actually think we need to be all in. Commit and follow through. Whatever season you are in, whatever God is calling you to do, trust in him and commit to it. Let's pray. Lord, you know the message that I was trying to convey this morning. I believe it was from you, Lord. Lord, I pray just lay clarity on people's hearts this morning, Lord. To understand the season that they're in, to understand the season that we're in as a church, Lord. Lord, take what has been said this morning and mould it in people's minds and hearts. In Jesus' name. Amen.